On March 20th, 2026, at exactly 2:46 in the afternoon Universal Time, the Sun will cross 0 degrees of Aries, the Spring Equinox, the astronomical new year, the moment the entire Zodiac resets and a new cosmic cycle officially begins. And I need you to hear this before March 20th, because in 40 years of watching equinoxes, I have never seen one arrive carrying the weight that this one carries, because 0 degrees Aries in 2026 is not a neutral coordinate. It is the exact degree where Saturn and Neptune met on February 20th to initiate the most significant planetary restructuring in 3 centuries. It is the exact degree where Venus entered Aries on March 6th to restart what needed restarting in love and worth. And on March 20th, the Sun, the most powerful body in our solar system, the engine of all life and all light, will arrive at that same degree. And what it downloads at that threshold is something I have been preparing to tell you for weeks. I'm Luna Solano. This is why I had to record this today. Not to add to the noise of equinox content, but because the spring equinox of 2026 is not like other spring equinoxes. It is happening inside a compressed window of extraordinary cosmic activation, in the same 6-day period as Mercury turning direct, as the new moon in Pisces, as the approach of Aries season. And the combination of those events creates something that I can only describe as a cosmic download, a concentrated infusion of new directional energy, a clear, specific, astrologically supported transmission of what your next chapter is supposed to be about. And before I tell you what that means for your life, I want to tell you about something that happened on exactly this date, March 20th, but in a different year at a different degree, that illuminates what equinoxes do when they arrive at charged coordinates. In 2015, when the total solar eclipse fell at 0 degrees Aries on the spring equinox, I watched more people make significant, life-altering course corrections in the 4 to 6 weeks following that equinox than in any comparable period I had previously witnessed. Not necessarily dramatic changes, but structural ones. The kind of changes that 2 years later the people who made them look back at and say, that was the turning point. That was when I stopped living the old chapter and began actually living the new one. That 2015 equinox eclipse was a planted seed. What grew from it over the following year was the framework of lives that were more genuinely aligned, more honestly constructed, more attuned to what was actually true for the people living them. And the equinox of 2026, while not an eclipse, is arriving with something that in some ways has even more layered significance. It is the first Sun arrival at 0 Aries after Saturn and Neptune restructured that degree. The Sun is about to illuminate with its full equinox power the exact coordinate where the civilizational reset was announced. And what it lights up will be visible in your chart, in your life, in the specific areas of your existence that 0 Aries activates, with a clarity that the equinox magnifies to its maximum. If you've been feeling on the edge of a significant beginning, if you've had a sense that something is almost ready to launch, almost ready to be spoken, almost ready to be lived rather than just contemplated, you are not imagining it. The stars confirm exactly what you've been sensing, and by the time we finish today, you will understand the 3 specific things the equinox is downloading into your life, what Mercury direct on the same day means for how you communicate those things into existence, and what you need to do before March 22nd, while the equinox charge is at its maximum, to receive and anchor what is being offered. Before we go further, if this kind of precise, historically grounded, event-specific astrological guidance is what you've been looking for, please subscribe. I bring real data and real history to this work, and this community means everything to me. Let me give you the precise astronomical picture, because this equinox has a configuration that deserves careful attention. On March 20th, 2026, at 14:46 Universal Time, the Sun enters 0 degrees and 0 minutes of Aries. This is the precise astronomical moment when day and night are equal in length across the planet, the equinox in the most literal sense, from the Latin equus nox, equal night. The sun is at its maximum power of balance point, which in astrology translates as maximum capacity for initiation, and it is at 0 Aries, the Aries point, the world point, the most collectively resonant degree in the entire zodiac. On the same day, March 20th, 2026, within hours of the equinox, Mercury stations direct at 8 degrees and 30 minutes of Pisces. Mercury has been retrograde since February 26th, moving backward through Pisces, the last sign of the zodiac, the sign of endings and of the dissolution of what is no longer needed before the new cycle begins. A Mercury retrograde in Pisces is one of the most internally focused, most reflective, most inward-turning Mercury retrogrades possible. It asks us to go back into the deep waters of what we have not yet fully processed, what we have not yet fully understood, what we have been carrying from the previous cycle that needs to be seen clearly before the new one can begin. Mercury turning direct in Pisces on the spring equinox is the resolution of that internal review, the direction forward of the mind after its period of inward review, and the fact that it happens on the same day the sun enters 0 Aries, the same day the cosmic year begins, is not timing that the universe arrived at accidentally. There is a Sabian symbol I want to take you inside of, and it is not the one most people cite for the spring equinox. Most people talk about 0 Aries itself. I want to tell you about 8 degrees Pisces, the degree where Mercury stations direct, because this degree is carrying something specific and important. The Sabian symbol for 8 degrees Pisces is a girl blowing a bugle, a single clear note blown by someone young and unafraid, cutting through the air. There is no ambiguity in a bugle call. There is no diplomatic softening of the message. The bugle announces, it declares, it calls attention to something that needs to be heard. And the girl blowing it, young, unafraid, clear in her purpose, is doing something that requires breath and courage and the willingness to be the one who breaks the silence. Mercury direct at this degree, on the day the sun enters 0 Aries, is the cosmos announcing something. It is the clear note cutting through the accumulated static of the retrograde period. It is the mind, after its weeks of internal processing, its revisiting of what was unresolved, its deep dive into Pisces' ocean of the unfinished, emerging with clarity, with the specific clarity that comes only after genuine inner work, and sounding it forward, clearly, unapologetically, into the new season. What the bugle is announcing in your specific life is what Mercury has been processing in Pisces since late February. The clarity that has been forming in the retrograde period about what you actually think, about what you need to say to someone that you haven't said, about the understanding you've been approaching but haven't quite arrived at, that clarity is what Mercury direct is now prepared to express. And the equinox sun at 0 Aries is the amplifier, the first day of the new year, on the most charged degree in the current sky, with Mercury announcing the inner clarity that the retrograde developed. This is a combination that I find extraordinary, and I want you to be ready to receive what it's offering. Let me give you the 3 specific downloads of this spring equinox. These are the 3 things the cosmos is transmitting through the compressed activation of March 20th, 2026, and I want you to have them clearly enough to act on them. The first download is what I call the compass reset. The spring equinox is always, astrologically, a moment of directional renewal, the moment when the solar energy that has been building through winter breaks fully into forward momentum. At 0 degrees Aries in 2026, this directional renewal has an unusual quality of precision, because 0 Aries in this year is not just the start of a new zodiac cycle. It is the degree that has been charged by Saturn and Neptune's restructuring, by Venus's love restart, and now by the sun's equinox arrival. The directional renewal this equinox offers is not the generic fresh start of the first day of spring. It is a specific realignment of your personal compass to a direction that is more genuinely yours than the one you were traveling before. Think of it this way. Imagine you've been navigating with a compass that was calibrated years ago when you were a different version of yourself, in service of a direction that was right for who you were then. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction of late February has been recalibrating that compass, clearing the magnetic interference of accumulated structures that were distorting its reading, and now the equinox arrives, and the compass settles. And what it points toward is something specific, something you can feel rather than only think, the direction that, when you're honest with yourself, you know is genuinely yours. The signal that this download is already active in your life. You may have had, in the days leading up to March 20th, unusual moments of directional clarity, a sudden sense of knowing, without full analysis, where you need to be pointing, what you need to be building toward, what no longer makes sense in the direction you've been traveling. Trust those moments. The compass is settling. The second download is what I think of as the permission activation. This one is specifically related to Mercury direct at 8 degrees Pisces on the same day. Here's what I mean. Mercury retrograde in Pisces from late February through March 20th has been asking everyone to revisit the relationship between what they genuinely know and what they've been saying they know, between the internal truth that has been forming in the deep Piscean waters of private understanding and the external expression, the words, the conversations, the communications that have either represented that truth or, in many cases, been a diplomatic approximation of it. Mercury direct in Pisces on the equinox is the activation of permission to say the true thing, not the approximation, the thing you've been processing internally that you've been not quite ready to express, whether because the timing wasn't right, or because the Mercury retrograde made communication unreliable, or because you needed more time to understand it yourself before you could offer it to someone else. That permission is now active. The bugle girl is ready to sound her note. And the spring equinox sun at 0 Aries says, the new year begins now, and it begins with what you actually mean. The signal that this download is reaching you. In the days of Mercury stationing direct, you may have noticed an unusual readiness to say something you've been holding, a specific conversation you are more prepared to have than you were 3 weeks ago. A clarity about a communication, a letter unsent, a truth unspoken, a question not yet asked of someone important to you, that has sharpened into something you can now actually express. That readiness is Mercury direct. That sharpness is the bugle call. Say it. The third download is the most architecturally significant, and it is the one that ties everything I've described into a single coherent transmission, the new chapter declaration. Here is what I mean by declaration, and why it matters that the equinox falls at the world point in this particular year. In astrology, the spring equinox is considered the most powerful astrological new year because it is not calendar dependent, it is astronomical. It is not based on human counting systems, but on the actual movement of the earth in relation to the sun. It is the moment when the entire sky resets. And when that moment happens at 0 Aries in a year, when 0 Aries has been the most activated degree in the entire current sky, when the sun arrives at the exact coordinate where the civilizational restructuring was announced, the equinox becomes what I can only call a sealing moment, a moment of cosmic declaration. The new chapter that Saturn and Neptune announced in late February needed a beginning, a real beginning, not the soft start of winter giving way to early spring, but an actual declared in the sky beginning. The spring equinox of 2026 is that declaration, and the cosmos is asking you, at the personal level, in the specific life that corresponds to the specific chart that you were born with, to make your own declaration in the same moment, not a wish, not an intention, a declaration, a clear statement of what the new chapter of your life is about, spoken into the equinox energy while the sun is exactly at 0 Aries. In 40 years of chart reading, I have observed that the people who navigate major astrological turning points most effectively are the ones who bring conscious intentionality to the moments of maximum cosmic support. The equinox is that moment, and the declaration is your act of meeting it. Now let me speak directly to the 3 signs whose lives are being most specifically activated by this equinox. Check your rising sign, please. The house placement of 0 Aries in your rising sign chart tells you exactly where the new chapter is beginning in your individual life. For Aries and Aries rising, the sun is entering your first house at 0 degrees, and in 2026, this means the sun is entering the degree that has been charged by Saturn, Neptune, and Venus over the previous 6 weeks. The new chapter the equinox is declaring for you is the most personal possible. The chapter of who you are in this new era, not who you were, not who you've been building toward, who you are now in the life that has emerged from the clearing and the restructuring and the restart of the last several weeks. The question the equinox is asking Aries, if you were to introduce yourself to the world as the person you have become, not the person you used to be, not the person you've been performing, what would you say? The action for Aries: write that introduction, even a paragraph. Write who you actually are now. Say it out loud. That is your equinox declaration. For Capricorn and Capricorn rising, 0 Aries falls in your 4th house, the house of home, roots, family, and the private foundation of your life. The new chapter being declared is about your foundation, about what you are building your life on, who you're building it with, where you feel genuinely at home in the world. Saturn has been particularly active in your chart, and the equinox is the declaration of what the restructuring of your foundation has made possible. What have you been clearing space for in your home life, literally or metaphorically, that you are now ready to build? The action for Capricorn: 1 concrete act of foundation building before March 22nd. A conversation with someone who constitutes your home, a physical change in your living space, a decision about where or with whom you want to put down roots. For Cancer and Cancer rising, the equinox sun is activating your 10th house of career, public life, and the contribution you make to the world beyond your private life. Jupiter direct in Cancer is simultaneously expanding your 1st house of personal identity and self. The tension between who you are internally, with Jupiter expanding your sense of self, and what you're building publicly, with the equinox declaring a new chapter in your career and reputation. That tension is the productive kind. It is the friction between genuine inner authority and the world's invitation to express it. The action for Cancer: identify 1 thing you are ready to offer the world, publicly, professionally, through your creative work or your service, that genuinely comes from who you have become. Name it, then take 1 step toward making it visible. Here is the ritual for the spring equinox. And because this equinox falls at the most charged degree in the current sky, I want the ritual to be genuinely aligned with its energy, which means it needs to happen at the right time, and it needs to involve the voice. The optimal time for this ritual is as close to the equinox moment itself as possible, 1446 Universal Time on March 20th. In practical terms, this means 10:46 a.m. Eastern, 7:46 a.m. Pacific, 2:46 p.m. London, 3:46 p.m. Central Europe. If you cannot observe the exact time, the afternoon of March 20th before sunset in your time zone carries the equinox charge most fully. What you need: stand or sit outside if possible, or near a window where you can see daylight. You do not need objects or candles for this ritual. You need your voice. You need to be in the light. At the equinox moment, or as close to it as you can manage, stand in the daylight. Take 3 full breaths. Let the light reach your face and your hands. Then speak out loud in your actual voice, not internally, your equinox declaration. This is 1 sentence. It begins with the words, "This is the year I," and then you complete it with the truest possible statement of what your new chapter is about. Not what you hope it will be, what you are declaring it to be. Because the Aries energy is always personal, always the self as the agent of its own beginning, followed by the specific direction you are claiming. Then say the affirmation for this equinox. I step into the new year at the speed of my own truth. I carry forward what is genuinely mine. I leave behind what the winter has completed. I begin. Say it once, mean it, then go live your day. The equinox will do the rest. What I most want you to carry from today, the spring equinox of 2026, is not a gentle awakening. It is a declaration. The sun arriving at 0 Aries, the most charged degree in the current sky, on the same day Mercury turns direct at the degree of the clear bugle call, is the cosmos announcing, with the full power of the astronomical new year, that the new chapter is real and ready to be lived. The compass reset is available. The permission to say the true thing is activated. And the cosmic support for the declaration of who you are becoming is at its maximum. You don't have to know the whole new chapter. You only have to declare its first true sentence. The rest follows. Tell me in the comments, what is your equinox declaration? What is the one sentence that begins with, "This is the year I want to hear it, and I want to witness it with you." Until next time, keep looking up. This is Luna Solano. I want to stay with you a few more minutes on what the equinox means specifically in the context of everything we've been moving through since the start of this cosmic season, because the spring equinox of 2026 is not a standalone event. It is the culmination of a sequence that I believe is one of the most astrologically significant sequences I have watched unfold in my 40 years of practice. And I want to make sure you understand not just what the equinox is, but why it lands with the weight it does specifically in this year. In the 6 weeks preceding March 20th, 2026, the sky delivered 3 extraordinary events in sequence. On February 20th, Saturn and Neptune made their conjunction at 0 degrees Aries, the most significant planetary meeting at the world point in over 3 centuries, initiating what I have been calling the generational reset. On March 6th, Venus entered Aries at 0 degrees, the planet of love and self-worth, walking into the freshly restructured coordinate, initiating the bold restart of how we show up in love. On March 3rd, the total lunar eclipse at 12 degrees and 54 minutes of Virgo arrived, completing the clearing work, surfacing the truths that needed to be seen, making space for what comes next. And on March 18th, the new moon in Pisces at 28 degrees offered the final surrender, the releasing of what is carried from the old chapter into the new one. Every one of these events was pointing forward. Every one was preparation. Everyone was moving toward a threshold, and that threshold is March 20th, 2026. The spring equinox at 9:01 a.m. Universal Time at 0 degrees Aries, with Mercury turning direct at 8 degrees Pisces in the same day. This is the threshold. This is the moment that all of that preparation has been building toward. I've been watching this for 40 years, and I want to tell you something that I find genuinely moving about the precision of this sequence. The cosmic architecture of this spring, the way the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, the Venus ingress, the eclipse, the new moon, and the equinox have been arranged in this specific order, in this specific proximity, all centering on 0 degrees Aries as their organizing coordinate. This is not random. The universe doesn't arrange coincidences at this level of specificity. This is what the ancient astrologers meant when they talked about cosmic intention. The pattern has a purpose, and the purpose in this specific instance is to deliver everyone who has been doing the work of this extraordinary cosmic season to a very specific threshold in as clear and prepared a condition as possible for a very specific beginning. What is that beginning? That depends in part on the specific area of your life that 0 degrees Aries activates in your personal chart. But there is a quality that is universal to all of it, regardless of house placement. The beginning being offered at this equinox is the first step of the life that is built on what is actually real, not the life that was built on the structures that Saturn and Neptune have been dissolving, not the life that was organized around the self-protective stories that the eclipse surfaced, not the life that was organized around the need for certainty before beginning, the life that is built on the honest foundation, on the actual values, the actual desires, the actual sense of who you are and what you're here to do, that this entire cosmic sequence has been clearing space for. You've done the work to get here. The question the equinox is asking is simply, are you willing to step across the threshold? Let me tell you something I've observed consistently in chart readings during spring equinox windows that land at charged degrees. The people who receive the most from equinox energy are the ones who bring their full, conscious presence to the moment, not the ones who are most spiritually practiced or most astrologically sophisticated, the ones who show up completely, who take the equinox seriously as the beginning it is, who make the declaration, who say the sentence out loud in the daylight. Those are the people who, 6 months later, can point to March 20th, 2026, as the day the new chapter genuinely began, not because the equinox magically rearranged their circumstances, but because they met the energy with the quality of presence it was offering, and that meeting, that genuine encounter between a prepared human life and an astrologically extraordinary moment, created momentum that carried forward in ways they couldn't have predicted. I want you to be one of those people. I want you to be the person who 6 months from now looks back at March 20th, 2026 and says, that was the day I stepped into it. That was the day I stopped preparing and started living the new chapter. The equinox is ready to be that day. The question is whether you will meet it. The morning of March 20th, the morning when day and night are equal, when the sun enters the first degree of the first sign, when Mercury sounds its clear bugle note at 8 degrees Pisces, stand in the daylight, let it reach you, say your sentence, this is the year and then the truest possible completion you can offer. Say it in your actual voice to the actual sky. The equinox will receive it, and the new chapter will begin. Until next time, keep looking up. This is Luna Solano,